I'm reminded of a teacher of young children who came into the classroom, and the children were all sitting quietly, attentively, and the teacher said, "Stand up, any of you who think you're stupid." And there was silence, and she waited, and there was silence, and she waited. And suddenly little Tommy stood up, and she said, "So, Tommy, you think you're stupid?" He said, "No, miss, but I can't bear to see you standing there alone anymore." which for no particular reason. Now, I'll tell you another story about Tommy. He was walking along a beach, his first visit to the beach with his dad, and they came across a dead albatross. And Tommy said, "What's that?" And his dad said, "It's an albatross. And he died and went to heaven." And Tommy looked at the albatross and looked at his dad and said, "Did God throw him back?" So I know my talk is about crafty listening, but what I really want to talk about is love. And I think everything we do is a question of love or a request for love. I further think that everything we do is motivated either by love or fear. So you can't read that, not that one, but the one before said, for me, love is a conscious decision to act in ways that manifest in other people's senses as generosity of spirit, benefit of the doubt, patience, compassion, consideration, and so on and so on. And I think the only reason we don't behave in that way is fear. Fear of not being heard, not being listened to, not being accepted, not being validated, not belonging, and so on and so on. I stand here as the possibility of love, light, and laughter. And what I mean by that is that no matter how you behave, I will do my best anyway to treat you with respect, patience, compassion, and so on. Light, I hope that this whole idea of crafty listening illuminates something for you. And laughter because we've already laughed, so therefore at least that I've gone beyond the possibility of. So here's a question. Oh no, that's more about love. You don't have to like people, you don't have to agree with them, and so on and so on. And I say love, really, in the way that I mean it, has nothing to do with other people except that they may benefit from it. And I think much the same about forgiveness, which is a whole other thing I'm concerned about. I think forgiveness isn't about letting go, forgiving or letting other people off the hook. I think forgiveness is a decision to commit ourselves to ourselves and the future. And the essence of forgiveness, I think, is giving up hoping for a better past. So here's a question. What do you stand for? Or as some people might put it to you, if not quite so directly, who the heck do you think you are? So just briefly, in my tiny little amount of time, turn to the person next to you in less than a minute and say to that person what you stand for. I think that moment by moment, every waking moment, we're making three choices, which are which button to press. We choose, we decide what to focus our attention on. So you can focus on the past or the present, the problem or the solution, self or other, etc., etc. We choose, we give meaning. Meaning happens nowhere but in our heads. And depending on what we focus on, the meaning we give it, we then choose how to act. So to put that in a slightly prettier way, I blame myself. So I want you to silently consider the following. I mean, you can make a noise like gasp with shock and horror, for example, but at least don't speak for a moment. So a few of you, what's your initial reaction? Now consider the following. How many of you thought it was a terrible thing to see or hear or read? Because? Who's it speaking about? Who's it a comment on?
Women.
Okay. How many of you saw it as a comment about women and stopped thinking about it? How many of you punctuated it to mean something that triggered in you a, did I hear someone say bollocks? I thought I did. But it's that often when people speak to us, the signals we get, verbal, visual, audible, and so on, we give meaning and react to the meaning we give it rather than necessarily consider the possibilities or other possibilities of meaning within the statement. So crafty listening, I think I went past one. Crafty is an acronym, and it stands for curiosity, responsiveness, assertiveness, focus, thoughtfulness, and yes. It can stand for anything I want, but that's what it means in the context of listening. So it's how to be curious in the face of the familiar when people are boring, you know what they're going to say, or the threatening, where somebody is being aggressive towards you and you have a reaction, you want to defend yourself and so on. And the shocking, like that statement was for some, the dull and the dreary, or just the same old, same old. How to be curious. And for me, the essence of curiosity is a sense of wonder. So there were times when I would see people doing or saying things which, when I would think that's crazy, that doesn't make sense. But now, mostly, I say to myself, when that doesn't make sense, it doesn't mean to me, when it doesn't make sense to me, it doesn't mean that it doesn't make sense. It simply means I don't understand it. So a question I ask myself in the face of the strange, the weird, etc., is what might have to be true for that behavior to make sense? And I may not get the answer, but at least it keeps me wondering. And that itself often is enough to switch me from being reactive as opposed to, I need to go back one, as opposed to responsive. And often people are reactive instead of responsive. And for me, it's an oversimplification. Reactive is often that there's some stimulus, some response, as if there's nothing in between. Did I say reactive? Responsive, to me, implies we have a choice about what we focus on, the meaning we give it, and the action we take. Assertive instead of aggressive, and instead of being wimpish, and instead of being, and focused on both the general and the specific, on the washy, focused on the instead of being washy, waffly, woolly, and for me, focused mostly on self. I believe strongly in the notion of constructive selfishness, and that we should focus first on self, to be in control of, responsible for our own state. State generates behavior. What keeps state in place very often are limiting beliefs and bedrock assumptions, and that often people stop being curious. Many people made up their minds a long, long time ago about who they are, how they fit in, what's permissible, what's possible, and what they stand for. And to be thoughtful, as opposed to being mindless, to be just reactive instead of thoughtful and considerate, to be considerate of others, to be aware of self, and to be able to think, especially when our buttons are being pressed, when the pressure's on, when things are not as we would have them be. And also, to be able to think and feel simultaneously, feel in a good way. And yes is not only a positive attitude based on the notion of intelligent optimism, but I liked from this morning the notion of the science of yes. But it's basically about a positive attitude, working on the assumption that things will work out, but you have to work at them. And intelligent optimism is saying things will work out. If I work at them, they may not, because along the way towards whatever I'm working towards will be pitfalls and barriers and obstacles and so on and so on and so on. So I do a lot of stuff under the notion of crafty. So, and one of the things about my approach to working, training, coaching, whatever, is that there's a title of what kind of workshops and training and things that I do, but I have no structure, no agenda, no timetable, no role plays, no case studies, and I hardly let anybody talk about anybody who's not in the room. And there are all sorts of reasons for that, which I've just said there. There are all sorts of reasons. And here are some. So the crafty approach, the way I can be in any of those situations. Each of us makes personal maps of reality. There's my maps, there's your maps, and what we create our personal maps out of, moment by moment, is the metaphors, assumptions, paradigms, and sensations that we experience in the moment. So I think that however many of you there are how many people in the room? 300, let's say. I think I'm speaking to one person 300 times over, and I'm 50% responsible, and you're 50% responsible for whatever we co-create. Now, I don't want to be at the effect of anybody unless I want to be. Whereas I used to think that if I was upset or not okay with myself, that it was your fault, somebody else's fault, which means I was living outside in, which is what I think most people do, and I wasn't taking responsibility for my 50%. I didn't even know that I was 50% responsible. I want to be 100% responsible for my 50%. So there's my map, there's your map. So that's what I've just said. If I choose to believe you are responsible for my state, I'm denying my responsibility for my 50%, and I'm blaming you for all the things that I'm doing. And since I stopped living as if you were responsible and I wasn't, I have to say I enjoy life a lot more and I like people a lot more. And I also think by living inside out as opposed to outside in, it is easier to be on purpose, to be guided by principle rather than not this way and that by whatever's just happened in the room or in the situation. And I'm a lapsed Catholic, so the notion of a guilt trip resonates with me. So truth isn't what we know, it's what we believe. And there is, yes, I'm not here as tablets of stone, I'm here on my own journey. But if you're willing to teach me, I might also act as a signpost. And if you're not willing to teach me, I'll learn something anyway. So I think we're on a journey from hurt to wholeness, many people. Many people, except many people are hurt in their journey through life. And some of that hurt goes so deep that it becomes self-hate. And the way I know that people often are full of self-hate is that they are hateful to other people, to their children, to their colleagues, to their parents, to their friends, to their lovers, to their partners. And I think it's hate that often prevents us acting from love and feeling afraid. And we look for balance, it's not fair. We look for somebody to aim at. We hope for somebody to come along with the right tools to heal the hurt. So, wholeness. And that often prevents emotional intelligence. And these are some of the key components of emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-management, self-motivation, social awareness. And the essence of social awareness is empathy. And for me, empathy is also then about listening, all the skills. And I should say each of the elements in the crafty is a set of skills. So curiosity is about good listening, good questioning. Responsiveness is about self-awareness, and so on and so on. And this appreciative inquiry, these are principles from the notion of appreciative inquiry, which is to approach anything with exploring it not from what went wrong, but what do we do well. And also that we are co-constructing our reality moment by moment, that if we anticipate positive in the future, we are simultaneously creating a positive in the present. But if we expect things to go well and accept that things will go wrong and we need to sort them out, then we can approach things in an anticipatory way, and that there is poetry in the very process of solving problems and finding solutions.